Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another wonderful episode of The Haunted Router. We're going to be looking at I'm a detective. I was called to a domestic dispute between a husband and a wife, and their son told me they eat people. As most parents do, if you're a good parent in society today, you have to make sure that you find as many homeless people as possible. Run them into a little corral in your backyard and use them as cattle. But this is going to be coming from Solar Durplexes. It's like SOLARDRXPP1. PP. Anyways.
Relatively new on the scene, it looks like.
Have they put a bunch of stories out? Like looking at them? They have...
Oh. They are? Oh, well,
these guys seem more
never mind. I'm thinking about the other guy that we were doing the episode on. Sorry, yeah. Solar Dr. X double P1. But yeah, never mind. This is an established guy.
Yeah, this is an established guy.
Okay. Right.
One of the things that
way harder now.
This is one of his newer stories. I'm sure by the time this episode releases, he'll have like 15 more. We're kind of new to the scene, so we're still trying to figure out how to. We've been messaging people; they don't always message back. Just wanted to have a bunch of banners saying, "If you start reading, we will come to your house and spread you real nice, like where they can get a good shot on your back." So we seemed like this one would be safe, but.
We will SWAT you.
Yeah, you just pop through the ceilings. I always get really excited when I don't want to even joke about getting bored. That'd be the worst thing ever. The most nightmarish experience. But
yeah, you're like, never mind. You know what?
Never mind. Never mind. Not after what happened. Like you see all these guys getting swatted all the time, and you're like, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. And being on the internet, that is definitely a fear. You got anything to add, Ben?
No, if you're liking the content, if you like the first story, and just spread it around, keep showing it to everybody that you know, make us super famous, make us super rich. And also, if you are a newer content, or if you're a newer writer on scary stories, no sleep or something like that, and you want your stories read, put it in front of us.
Absolutely.
Send it to us, and that would make our lives way easier than like bouncing these back and forth and then being like, well, they're not replying, so we gotta go back to a Solar DRX double P1. I'm just fucking around.
Yeah. Even if we're harsh, we will, like, because we're going to be harsh to people sometimes. It's going to happen. We're going to find ones we don't like. But we still enjoy the fact, and we'll still push you on the channel. We won't hate on you too hard where we say you should quit writing forever or anything. I'll try not to say stuff like that. I can be a little bit of a monster. But I do, if you guys write horror stories or you know, like, you want them out here, give us a shout. We'll look through them, see if they're good for the channel. We would definitely love all the stuff you can throw at us. I mean, that's what's fun about the internet is the social aspects and how we can really bounce and build off of each other. So that is a really good ad.
I'm a detective. I was called to a domestic dispute between a husband and wife. Their son told me they eat people. The report lay on my desk. The words were printed there in stark black ink.
Domestic disturbance, 14 Seabird Lane, Comrades Perch Island.
And below were the names.
Elias and Elra Vance.
Two similar names. This is already getting bad.
A domestic on the perch? That's a new one,
I said, and the springs of my chair groaned under my weight.
They usually handle their own business.
Sergeant O'Malley worked his crossword and did not look up. He had a face creased with a permanent judgment against the world and all its doings.
Law's complaint came from there. The nearest neighborhood. Old man Hermlock said they were going at it loud enough to scare the ghouls off of his roof. A lot of smashing, apparently. The Vances haven't been answering the line ever since.
He raised his head, and in his eyes you could see the pale, flat blue of a winter sky over a dead ocean.
You're up, Harper. Me? Don't you think sending a familiar face like Gibbs might be better, stupid Gibbs? Those folks are particular. Gibbs got a multi-car pile-up on the causeway,
O'Malley said.
And you need to learn how to deal with those particulars if you ever want to make a career in this coastal jurisdiction. It's a lover's quarrel. Go over there, knock some heads, tell them to keep it down, and be back before lunch.
He nodded with his chin towards the pistol on my hip.
And you know the islanders. Rules about mainland formalities. Leave that here. It's spooksome. You want me to go to an island known for its hostility to outsiders to mediate a potential violent domestic dispute unarmed? That's not hostile, private. Or it's not hostile, it's private.
He said.
And they're not savages, Alex. They're fishermen and farmers who want to be left alone. A uniform is an authority enough. Now go.
I rose and unclipped my sidearm from my belt. The island was a 20-minute boat ride from the mainland. The 100 or so that lived there lived by their own reckonings. They schooled their children in a one-room house and sent them out onto the water when they came of age. They bartered, and they kept to themselves, and they only crossed to the mainland for what the island couldn't provide. They had their own laws, and an old man to speak for them, and for their trouble to find its way to our desks on the mainland meant the trouble was serious. The deck of the ferry was cold beneath my feet. A low gray mist lay upon the water and shrouded all things from sight. It muffled the drone of the engine and swallowed the world until the mainland dissolved into a smear of gray behind us. The perch grew out of the void ahead, a dark upthrust of rock and pine that clawed at the sky. Then you could see the houses, bleached white things that clung to the stone or clustered near the harbor like sea foam caught in a crevice. An old woman sat hunched on a bench in a thick wool shawl. She was the only other soul aboard, and she looked at the water and not at me, and she did not speak. When the ferry groaned and nudged at the dock timbers, I was the only one to stand. I stepped onto the wet wood, and the air was another air altogether. The salt of it, and the reek of pine, and the smoke of wood fires burning somewhere beyond the stony rise. An older quiet was here. No sound of cars, no human call, just the wind and the gulls.
I want to say something real quick. This is 100% my thought right now. Is it starts off so fantastically. I mean, we went from like peak cringe, like glorious over the top anime action, and now we're just in the world of
Silent Hill 2 opening.
Yeah.
As fuck. Like, you can hear the music, you can hear the gulls, I can smell the water going across the ferry.
Absolutely, dude. It's such a good setup. It reminds me, I know you said Silent Hill 2, but it honestly, you ever play Fallout 4?
Oh, kind of.
Harbor, There's a DLC called like Harbor something. It's
Bar
like,
Harbor or something
Bar
like
Harbor.
that.
Yeah.
I got what you were
reminds me of like
saying.
Bar Harbor, and you're just like on this little ferry. Oh, it's just such a great opening, and it kind of even goes to something like what's the one with the bees? The bees.
Wicker Man. That's what I was about to say. Dude, how bad did O'Malley screw this narrator from the beginning?
Oh, don't be so upset about it there. You'll find your wheel knocks off over in Bar Harbor. It's so funny,
You're
dude.
throwing a tizzy, Alex. Just put your gun on the desk. Seriously, leave your gun, Alex.
Exactly.
And
dude,
I
love it.
the salt of it and the reek of pine and the smoke of wood fires burning somewhere beyond the stony rise. Like, dude, this is my writing style too, man.
It's so good.
Doctor Double XP, you have got my attention. I will say. Some men in oilskins and heavy sweaters worked on nets by a beached boat. Their hands moved with a slowness that bespoke a world without clocks. They stopped their work to watch me come ashore, and their eyes read the blue uniform, and they turned away. No word. I looked at a faded map that was nailed to a post by the docks. Seabird Lane was at the far end of the village, and I set out on that path. The houses were old things, built to stand against the wind and the sea, scrubbed clean against the rot, and nets lay draped on fences like grave shrouds. There were gardens starved by the salt wind, but still showing color. I saw faces in the dark glass of windows, pale specters that watched my passing, and then were gone. And then I saw the house, 14 Seabird Lane. It was a cottage like the others, but set apart from them. In the garden, a clay pot lay shattered upon the stone walk, and its dark soil was spilled out amongst the ruin of red flowers. Jesus, the poetry.
This is so good, dude. This is so good. I'm so hooked in. I mean, you can
clay pot shattered upon the stone walk.
You can smell the air. Yeah, it's that damp air with the slight fishy shrimp smell. It's
street
thick.
grainy windows with the pale faces popping up and then leaving.
Instantly, you're transported to there's two places because I've been like all over the U.S. right? So like weird flex, I know, but I remember Maine has this vibe, and also up by Washington, so like in Federal Way or like that northern Washington area where it just like gets out on the coast, you have this same vibe. It's like a sailor sitting out on the edge just smoking his pipe. Oh, it's so good. Both those places, both time I was there, I can smell it. I can breathe it in from this story, dude. I mean, I'm wet.
Terribly evocative. I've never seen like cold ocean before, but I was near Lake Erie one time when it was still pretty chilly outside. Not exactly the same vibe. People were like trying to make it tropical while we were there, but yeah, I've never seen cold ocean like this. But it's something that sticks so hard in my mind when I love the imagery so much.
Basically, wherever you go, that's the ocean, not like a gulf or anything. It's gonna be pretty cold. Like even like in Florida, the water's freezing. California, the water's cold too. It's just one of those things.
Soon.
Yeah, you gotta go to California. There you go, dude.
I'm heading to Cali, Cali way.
That's awesome.
Through a window left open to the wind, I could hear the sounds. A man's low rumble and a woman's sharp answer. They were still at it. I drew a lungful of cold air to ready myself, and I knocked my fist against the door. Inside, all sounds stopped. A long quiet. Then the door groaned on its hinges and opened into the dark of the house. The man who stood in the doorframe was a wall of bulk and weathered hide that filled the space of the door. He wore a beard, and his hands were the size of quarry stones, stained about the quicks of his nails with a blackness like engine grease or old blood. This would be Elias Vance. His eyes held a hard light, but when they fell upon the blue of my uniform, some of that light seemed to fail, leaving behind what might have been shame or only surprise. In the dimness of the house beyond him, a woman stood with her arms crossed over her. Her hair was red, and it was twisted up in a knot at the back of her head. On the floorboards near her lay a broken plate. Near her feet lay a broken plate.
Elias Vance,
I said.
I'm Detective Alex Harper from the Mainland Precinct. We received a complaint about a disturbance.
He gave a noise in his throat that was not a word, and stepped back from the door. I entered into the smell of brine and stewed herbs and some other scent beneath that was the scent of the house itself, of old wood and old sorrows. The space was neat except for the evidence of their war. The broken plate, a stool overturned on its side, and on the stairs that climbed into the darkness of the second floor, a boy sat watching us with wide and unnervingly still eyes.
There's no need for the mainland business here,
Elara Vance said.
My husband and I were having a private discussion. The gossip of Hemlock should learn to mind its own business.
A discussion that involves breaking things and shouting loud enough for your neighbors to hear is no longer private, ma'am,
I said.
I do not want to put this in my report. I only want to know what happened and see that everyone is okay. Is anyone hurt?
Elias stared at the floorboards, and his jaw was tight. It was the woman who spoke.
He gets these fits of temper. That's how he is. He believes I am careless.
Careless with what?
I asked.
With our traditions,
Elias said. His voice was a low rumble from the pit of his chest.
She forgets the importance of things. She becomes lenient.
His eyes were on her then, a look that was not simple anger, but a deeper and more searing judgment, as if she had broken some covenant between them.
Traditions.
Wait, well, who is this? Oh,
Traditions haven't kept our stores full for the winter, have they?
She said.
Sometimes you have to adapt. Be practical.
All right.
I said, holding up my hands as if to ward off a blow.
Look, I can tell both of you are passionate people. I'm not here to take sides or to pry into your island ways. I'm only here to make sure the disagreements don't become dangerous. Has there been any physical violence? Elias, did you lay a hand on your wife? Never,
he said. He looked at me as if the question itself were the offense.
I would never harm Alara. And you, Alara?
I asked, turning to her.
Do you feel threatened?
She drew a breath, and her gaze moved away from my face to her husband's and back again, as if weighing two different kinds of trouble.
He's a lout,
she said.
But other than that, no, Detective, he did not hurt me.
Then I'm calling it a quarrel. That has went past bounds.
I said.
But I will have to file a minor report. You should know that if we are called back here to this house for any reason, that the law will take a harder hand. Do you understand?
They both gave a short, silent nod. The fury had not left the room, but it had drawn back into the corners. A strange and weary quiet took its place. Elias went to the spot on the floor, and he knelt with his great hands, began to gather the large shards of the plate. The woman watched him for a long moment. A look passed over her face that I could not read, and then she turned and went into the kitchen, and I heard the scrape of a kettle being set upon the stove. This resolved rather quickly, with them just nodding and walking away, and I think it's about to go Res 4. I was scratching a note in my book when I felt the weight of his stare. The boy on the stairs had not moved. He sat pale in the gloom and lost inside his clothes. His eyes were like holes burned in a blanket. Ooh. The argument had taken root in him in a way that it had not in his parents.
Jeez, bro, the boy is what sets it apart. So you have the house, right? And I'm like, oh, it's just a normal house, a normal domestic thing. Yeah, you got oil grease guy who probably spends all day turning wrenches, just angry about his wife trying to break from tradition. And then you have the kid just...
Yeah, he's just in the corner like...
Yeah, dude. It just adds.
And then there was the little boy
fear.
from The Grudge sitting on the stairs.
Yeah.
What's your name, boy? Toshio.
Hey, Toshio, weird name for man, but you do you.
Yeah, weird name. The peace had been made, such as it was. I could take the afternoon ferry back across the water and set the strange accounting of it down on paper. I snapped the book shut, and I slipped the weight of it into my coat. The woman Ilara returned from the darkness of the kitchen. She would not meet my eye, but instead looked toward her husband, as he stood like a beast of burden by the door.
Elias, fetch some driftwood for the evening fire,
she said, and her voice was not a wife's request, but a command given to dismiss him from her sight, so she might offer up some parting lie of peace before sending me from her house. Elias looked at me a final time, and the storm was still in his face, but he gave a curt nod of his head, and turned and was gone out of the back door into the gray light. When he was gone, it was as if some gray weight had been lifted from the low timbers of that house.
Thank you for your visit, Detective Harper,
Ilara said, and her voice was softer now.
I'm sorry for the trouble.
It's no trouble at all, ma'am. I just wanted to ensure that things went peacefully here,
I said, and I moved towards the door.
Domestic disputes can be unsettling for everyone, especially the children.
I turned my head to where the boy still sat on the stairs.
He doing all right?
Finn is a sensitive boy,
she said, and she made a gesture with her hand as if shooing a fly, as if his nature were a defect she had learned to abide.
He has an active imagination.
As I stood on the threshold, I felt an urgent claim on the hem of my coat. I turned and the boy was there. He stood behind me with a strange look on his face. He looked past me into the house, to where his mother worked by the hearth, and he made sure she was not looking.
I need to tell you something,
he whispered. I crouched down and looked into his face.
What is it, Finn? You can tell me.
He leaned to me, and his hand was a small cold fist, clenching the cloth of my jacket. His eyes were wild with a terror that had no place in the heart of a child.
They're not fighting about what you think,
he whispered.
It's about the people from the mainland. It's always about them.
What about him, Finn?
He swallowed, and his gaze flew to the gray and twisted trees. Then he leaned so close, his lips were nearly at my ear.
My mommy and daddy,
he said.
They eat them. They eat the people from the mainland.
You okay there, pal? Did I destroy you?
You made me lose it. I knew you were gonna break me eventually.
They eat the people. They eat the people from the mainland. Mommy and Daddy won't let me have my Nintendo while they crunch at your bones.
But it's out, dog. They took his Switch. He said, fuck y'all. The words landed in the plain air, and they meant nothing. The notion of it. Cannibalism? On an island a stone's throw from a modern American town? It was preposterous. It had to be a child's interpretation of something ugly he'd heard. I set the words aside as you would a piece of stone that did not fit the wall you were building. I reached out, and with a gentle pull, I loosened his hand from my coat. I gave him a smile.
Hey, it's alright.
I said,
Grown-ups say some pretty scary things, sounding things, when they're angry, don't they? Sometimes it sounds like they could eat each other alive. It's just an expression. It doesn't mean it's real. Your parents love you and they don't eat anyone, I promise.
cops suck. But the boy was not comforted. He looked at me, and his face collapsed into a mask of pure and desolating grief. It was the look of a true believer who has been met with an apostasy. The tears stood in his eyes, but did not fall.
No,
He whispered.
you did not understand. You did not understand.
He turned from me then, and fled, his small feet in their socks making no sound on the wood of the floor, and he was gone up the stairs into the shadows of the house. I stood and turned my back. I had done my work here. It was time to leave this.
Yeah,
No,
what a
son,
great
they don't
day. What a great day at work. Oh, man, I'm so glad I got this bag of Winstons. These Winstons
earned
get
it.
me through the day.
He just like puts it out on the kid.
I'm too old for this shit. Put out your hand,
He's
little.
too old for this.
Hey,
shit, yeah.
hey, Jimmy, come back here, you stupid little runt. What do your parents think about this? A little cha-cha for the hand.
Here, kid, have a cigarette. Calm down. I had done my work here. It was time to leave this quiet desolation and return to the mainland where things could be measured and made sense of. I began to walk, but the boy's whisper went with me. It was a stubborn and unwelcome shadow that the sun could not burn away. The boy's words had planted a seed of disquiet in my mind, and while I told myself that this was a child's fiction born from a house of unhappy truth, reason would not set my heart at ease. I told myself that the human mind will invent monsters to explain the sorrows of the world, for the monsters can be slain. I was halfway to the ferry landing where the gray water lapped at the timbers of the dock when a voice called out to me, a voice rich and warm.
Detective, a moment if you'd be so kind.
I turned and saw an old man seated upon a bench that had been hewn from a single great log of driftwood. He had a beard that flowed down to his chest, white as sea foam, and his eyes were a startling and brilliant blue. In his hands he held a piece of wood and a small knife, and from the wood he was coaxing the shape of a bird. His smile was not like the other faces I had seen there. It was a true and genuine thing that creased the old map of his face, and it was a thing that could disarm a man before he knew he had been armed. He radiated a calm and settled authority. This was the island's elder.
Good day, sir.
I said, and I walked to where he sat.
Detective Alex Harper. You must be Malachi.
Indeed I am.
He replied. His voice was a deep and comforting burr.
And I would guess from the grim set of your shoulders as you arrived and the slightly less troubled look upon you now that you have successfully poured oil on the troubled waters at the Vance house.
Something like that.
I said.
It seems to have settled for the time being. Hopefully they'll keep it down from now on.
Elias has a hard head and Alara a sharp tongue.
Malachi said, and he chuckled low in his chest as his knife continued its deft and practiced work.
It's unfortunate pairing of temperaments at times, but their hearts are true in all ways. We are grateful you made the trip, Detective. It relieves me of having to deliver a harsh island judgment.
He stopped his work, the island judgment. He stopped his work then and looked up at me, and his gaze was both kind and possessed of a deep and knowing power.
But you look weary from your journey. You are already headed back to the mainland then? What a pity.
Well, my work here is done, and...
I let the words fall away, for I would not tell this man that his island had creeped me out.
But your visit is so short.
Malachi exclaimed, and a look of true disappointment crossed his face.
You mainlanders are always in such a rush. You never stop to see our little world. It's truly a shame because you arrive on our shores at the most auspicious time. Our annual harvest festival is just in 2 days.
Oh, get the hell out of there. Goodbye,
Yeah, they were going full-on Wicker Man, dude.
Oh, get out of there. It is not good. South of the border there, pal. Get away.
He's definitely keeping him standing here too long talking that he's about to turn around and see that the ferry is like
gone.
I'm calling it. I'm calling it. He said the words harvest festival as if they were a benediction, and his eyes took on the light of deep and holy reverence.
It's the highlight of our year.
He said,
A celebration of the sea's bounty, the season's turn. There'll be music, dancing, a great feast. It is a spectacle, I assure you, cannot be found anywhere on your side of the water. A real piece of living history.
a curiosity rose in me against my better judgment. Oh man, it was a lure, and I was a fish rising to it.
A festival, you say? I suppose I could stay. I do have a couple of personal days I could take.
A beatific smile bloomed upon Malachi's face.
Excellent! I would consider it a personal honor, and what a wonderful gesture of goodwill between the Perch and the mainland authorities. It shows us you could care beyond the matters of law enforcement. Please stay as our guest.
He pointed with the tip of his knife down a path that led away from the dock.
Oh, Martha runs the small guest house just off the cove. The Mariner's Rest. She will make you feel right at home. I'll inform her to expect you.
The offer was warm and heartfelt. It smothered the last of the boy's dark whisper. The elder himself was inviting me. This was the path of reason. This was an offer of peace, an unplanned holiday on an island of strange and simple folk.
All right, Malachi.
I said, and I heard myself laugh.
You've convinced me. Thank you.
That was fucking baller.
The pressure's all mine, my boy.
He said, and his gaze returned to the wood in his hands, which I could now see was a perfect tiny seagull, wings poised for flight.
You will enjoy yourself. Everyone's so welcoming to our special guests.
I like that he's just holding, he's just crafting his man meat into a seagull.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, this cop's just like, it's a pretty weird thing to do to your penis. And he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
he's like-
In our little town, we like to use the knives and such to butter up our willy jigs.
I gotta get it ready for the festival. Only 2 days.
Only
He's like,
2
"You're really-
days.
You're really
The
going to town on
children
that
will
thing,
get a
old
kick
man.
out of this.
Watch its wings flap.
Floppy, floppy, floppy.
An hour later, as I stood in... Dude, this also, I wanted to point out just how, like, hook, line, and sinker the narrator is, where he's... And I love that your voice is pairing him as, like, the no bullshit guy that very easily walks into the trap. And, dude, that little laugh that you gave a second ago was just genius, where you're like, you've convinced me, old man. Like, that was fucking brilliant.
I guess I did pack a bottle of bourbon.
This guy thinks he's the shit.
dude, he's in my head. He is like, he's not Max Payne 1 or 2. He is Max Payne 3, where he has just gone far past caring anymore.
Hell yes.
He's there with his wine shirt, just like,
Where are my damn pain pills? I guess I could watch some hicks throw cornholes or whatever they do.
Or their cocks up or something. An hour later, I stood in a room at the Mariner's Rest. Martha was a woman with kind eyes and hands soft with dough, and she showed me to a room with a bed dressed in a quilt of many colors, and a window that looked out upon the sea. I used the guest house telephone and called the precinct and told O'Malley I was taking my days. He grumbled at the wire's other end and spoke a word about me going native, and then he approved it. I unpacked a few poor things I carried in my bag, and I looked out from my window upon the island of Cormorant's Perch. The mist was breaking, and the thin shafts of a pale sun descended through the pines. Malachi was right. Oh, I had judged this place with a mainlander's prejudice. I had allowed the ravings of a troubled child to color the world with a darkness that was not there. The islanders were not monsters. They were people wedded to their rock and to their old and peculiar ways. And I have been given the chance to witness it. I had set my foot upon a new path, and chose to believe it was a path of my own choosing. I woke to the cries of gulls. At the insistence of Malachi, I was not charged for my lodging or my meals. Old Martha set out before me a breakfast of smoked fish, bread, and coffee. She moved about the kitchen with a solemn sort of care. Her attentions not so much of kindness, but... Sorry, let me redo that. I'm getting a call. I woke to the cries of gulls. Okay, she moved to the kitchen. Yeah, she moved about the kitchen with a solemn sort of care. Her attentions not so much of kindness, but as of some duty she was called to perform.
A joyous, the harvest is a joyous time, detective.
I said, and her hand was steady as she refilled my cup.
A time for us to give thanks and blessings the sea provides. It's a wonderful time to have a mainlander here to share it with us. It's been so long since we've had a guest for the festival.
After the meal, I set out to walk the island. The paths were little more than lines scratched into the hide of the land, and they wound through the close press of pine and rock that was the island's heart. For hours, I saw no people, and heard nothing of the wind in the high branches and the sound of my own passage. I came at last to the cliffs at the southern edge of the land, a sheer escarpment where the land gave up its claim to the world.
I know he's setting up the beauty of this place, but isn't it a little freaky that, like, he's got the old guy who's way too nice. He's got the lady who smokes way too much that's like, oh, I'm so joyous. And those are the only two people he's talked to other than the abuse of the house. Everybody else is just like staring from windows. No one's on the roads.
No one's walking around or anything like that. And they're all just assuring him, like, no, that's cool. That's totally fine. And he's like, you know what? I understand these people.
Yeah, man,
I understand them.
They just like staying in their houses. Hey,
I'm a goddamn detective.
I'm a detective.
I know what it is. I know what I am. They're scared. They're scared of my authority. But I'm going to figure it out.
They think how cool I am. I got this leather jacket, and they're like, whoa, that's a leathery leather jacket. Must be afraid times in the winter.
I imagine, like, it's a cool bomber jacket. Like the leather with the fur. I'm just picturing almost Leon Kennedy, pretty much. But a little bit more Nicolas Cage. Like you were saying, like with the bees and stuff. I definitely want him to be a little bit Nick Cage. Far below, the waves hammered at the rocks. A constant and violent toil. It was a place of terrible beauty, and the water churned like a great gray mill race of the abyss. Toward midday, I turned back, and a smell drew me to the village. The smell of roasting meat, and the far-off sound of some music. Yum. The place had come alive with a purpose. Oh, here we go. This is the only time they come out. They were stringing ribbons of garish color from house to house, and in the center of the square, a great pyre of wood was being raised. Trestle tables of raw timber were set out beside it, long as the feasting tables of old kings.
Good day for a stroll, detective!
A man's voice called. He sat on an overturned lobster pot, mending a net of deep blue color. I knew him from the docks.
Certainly is,
I replied, and walked toward him.
Alex Hopper.
Oren,
he said. He offered me his hand, and the grip of it was hard.
Pleased to have you here with us, but for the Harvest Festival, it's only right for me to show our mainland neighbors our truest selves once in a while.
We sat and spoke for the better part of an hour while he worked. Fucking lazy. He told me stories of storms that had names like gods, and of the old feuds between the fishing families, and of strange fish that they pulled from the deep channels, things with no names on the mainland charts. His talk was filled with the island's traditions, of the hunger of the sea and of the price of its bounty, and I listened as a man listens to the parables of a faith he does not share but finds compelling. Later, I saw a woman named Brenna. She sat weaving a great tapestry, and upon it were the figures of islanders in a boat heaving a great net from the Black Sea. In the net were other figures, things that had once been men, their limbs set at angles of profound distress.
It tells the story of the first harvest,
She explained, and her fingers never ceased their nimble and practiced dance.
Our ancestors learned to receive the gifts from the deep, gifts that keep our people strong and hale through the cold winters.
She looked up and gave me a serene and beatific smile.
Every festival we welcome a traveler to share in our traditions, a custom passed down from the beginning to honor the bond between the settled and the adrift.
I looked at the grim tableau she was weaving, and took it for the sacred history and a strange thing to celebrate with such an open heart. That evening, I ate with Martha and 2 old sailors whose flesh was too frail for the sea, but whose eyes still held the look of it. Martha served a thick, dark stew of roots I could not name, and a meat she called only island game, and would say no more of it.
That's person. That's person. This is islands cannibals. The one
Island game?
they eat.
He hasn't seen an animal.
Yeah.
Gulls, that's it. Wolves,
Dude,
that's
they're
the only
people.
thing.
Yeah.
This is the meat from random animals. Trust me, I'm doing my best sexy voice.
Oh, no, I think isn't Martha the cigarette lady? She's like,
Oh.
quit bitching.
Yeah, it's just random game meat.
You get what you get. Ugh, man. All right, so they're definitely already. He's partaken of the communion.
Yeah.
We drank a wine made from the berries that grew on the rock, a thing of some potency, and it coursed in the blood like a warm and drowsy poison that had smoothed the hard edges of the world. The warmth of these people, the welcome they offered up, it was a constant and disarming tide that pulled at the pilings of my own reason. As I climbed the stair to my room, the world seemed a simple place, and all the sorrows of the mainland were a distant country. I lay in the dark, and from the village came the slow and solemn beat of a drum, a sound like the beating of a great heart. It was the sound of a thing coming to pass, of a rite being prepared. I chose to hear in that sound a song of peace, and let the darkness take me. So, this is the end of his first day or second day? No,
Yeah,
he's woken
I
up.
think he just went to sleep. I got hit with a yawn there because I do those breathy voices and my brain has 0 oxygen left in it.
Yeah. I can't breathe right. That's why I yawn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so what people don't understand is sometimes we'll like double up these stories so that we can get a few different episodes out, and we'll do long recordings on our days off. And I went from Cliff in the last story, who literally took every existence out of me trying to do his breathy voice, to now I'm doing women's voices. Dude, I'm about to headbutt the table, just so you guys know. You're about to just hear the cats do the narration. And Ben here is going to quit reading and just start playing Roblox. So you guys got to stay to the end to see if I die.
That's what I'm trying so hard to like maintain this energy on like 3 hours of sleep. We suffer for this art. Like, share, and subscribe. All right. The morning broke gray and doleful, and the day of the harvest festival arrived under a sky of leaden slate pulled low across the water. The wine of the night before had left a bitter sediment in my blood, and I sought to clear my head with a walk along the shore before the ordained celebrations of the evening began. I chose a different path this time, a track that led toward a cove of which Orin had spoken, a place of rocks and tide pools that the islanders called the Boneyard.
It's where the sea gives back what it has taken,
He had said, and there was a knowing in his eye I had mistaken for charm.
whale bones, smooth glass, shipwreck timbers.
The path was no clear path, but a scar through the gorse that descended toward a crescent of black shingle, where the sea foamed and fretted. Dude, fuck this hyper literary author. The path is no path.
We go from like
but a
the last
scar
guy.
through the- yeah,
And
where it's
I
like
think-
punch,
I think-
hit, hook.
Yeah, I think
vein.
that's what's going on, is we're reading something that's actually profoundly not retarded. And so we're sitting here, just our mind has to like crank its gears to turn on, okay, we're smarter than this, which is
Yeah, I have to
lying
go
to myself.
back to like literal. Yeah. All right. The path was no path, but a scar through the gorse that ascended toward a crescent of black shingle where the sea foamed and fretted. The cove was a sepulchre of driftwood, a tangled ossuary of trees scoured and bleached to a bone whiteness by the salt and sun. I saw where the great rib of a leviathan bone broke from the sand like the arch of a ruined cathedral. I walked the tide line where the last wave had laid its lace of foam upon the shore. I was soothed by the solemn and rhythmic hammer of the waves, by the cold and absolute solitude of that place. I bent to the shingle to retrieve a stone worn smooth as a palmful of worry when I saw it. It was a shard of unnatural whiteness protruding from the wet and sucking sand. I knelt in the dampness and worked it free with my fingers from the cold earth. It was not a piece of shell nor of coral. It was the distal phalanx of a human finger.
Oh, let's go!
No mistaking its morbid and articulate perfection. A coldness that had no source in the sea air entered into me. A chill from some other and more terrible climate. Dude, they are not worried about this guy one bit. There's no ferries today. There's no ferries probably for a week around the Harvest Festival. That was the last one out. They're just like, yo, you go check out the boneyard, buddy. We're going to get everything ready over here.
Dude, I think O'Malley was like, oh, we need to get rid of... We little idiot detective. We need to send him over across the pond and get him in. We need ourselves a sacrifice, and I'm sure as hell not giving any of my kin. Oh, send over old Alex. He's got an alcohol problem anyway. His family left him. He can't even pay alimony. Just get rid of that loser.
O'Malley has just been doing crosswords this entire time, way back on the way more crime-ridden mainland, and Alex is like the up-and-coming detective that's gunning for his job. Yeah. And so when this call comes in, O'Malley is like, oh, I know the perfect place for you, lad. Go cut your teeth over on the island for once.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And then he just goes back to his crosswords, and he's just ignoring the phones ringing off the hooks. Like, all right, so he pulled a finger bone out of the water, man, and now he's really realizing he's standing in the water that's even cooking him in, dude. Yeah, he's cooked. He's about to be, bro.
There's a reason why he had to leave his weapon. He's completely toast.
He fucked him up so hard, dude. O'Malley, you bitch. I stood and made to hurl it back into the water, to give to the sea's forgetting, when I saw the glint of metal upon it. Corroded and green from its long slumber in the salt, a circle of baser metal, a cheap and simple wedding band still clung to the bone. Bro, if this is like his dead wife or something...
that'd be so good.
My eyes quartered. He's like, Mary! My eyes quartered the beach with a new and terrible attention. They were no longer the eyes of a tourist, but of a hunter, or of the hunted. And those are different eyes. And in that desolate place, there was a New Testament written in the debris, and I began to read. Oh, that is Max Payne 3. Hell yeah, dude, you got it.
There was a testament written in the sand, and I was beginning to read.
Half hidden in a great cloth of rotten cast net, cast high off the cliff walls, was a shadowed arch of a human mandible. It was yellowed with the age, and a few teeth still clung to their sockets, save for one which held the dull gleam of an amalgam.
Amalgam?
It was amalgam. Of an amalgam filling, a small testament of dentistry, and a life lived on the other side of the water. I took a step back from it, and my feet turned to sickly bones. The boy's whispers returned, and I no longer a child's fever dream, but spoken from the heart. They eat people from the mainland.
Bro, he is boned, man. My gaze fell upon the driftwood piles with a dawning horror, and that which I had taken for the ribs of seals or porpoises I now saw with a new and awful clarity to be the staved-in architecture of a human rib cage. I saw a splintered femur that had been gnawed and broken. These were not skeletons. These were the leavings. This was the offal of a feast. The friendly welcome of the elder Malachi, the hardy parables of Orin, the strange tapestry of Brenna the Weaver with its figures pulled misshapen from the deep. The meat in Martha's stew. A thing with no name, but with a provenance I now understood. All of it came together in my mind, a constellation of terror whose shape was now revealed. This was not a harvest of the sea, it was a harvest of men.
That's such a hymn line, too.
This ain't no harvest of the sea, it's a harvest of men.
Yeah, it plays the CSI music.
Yeah, exactly.
I turned from that place of bones and I ran. I clawed my way up the slick embankment, my hands gripping at the thorns of the gorse and at the wet and naked roots of trees, as if they were the hands of saviors held out to me from the living world. I burst from the ravine's edge and did not stop. I ran with the terror of a debased animal back to the false sanctuary of the Mariner's Rest, and a single thing was screaming in the meat of my brain, I must get off this island. I crashed through the guest house door and fled up the stairs. I slammed the door to my room and leaned my back against the wood. My eyes scanned the small confines of my room. One door, one window that gave out onto the square. My training was not made for this. This was a heresy of the flesh, a pagan rite as old as the rocks it was enacted upon. My radio. With hands that would not be still, I retrieved it from my bag. I raised its small antenna and thumbed the switch and pressed it to my ear. There was no squawk of the dispatcher's call.
Oh, they hung him
There
out
was
to dry
nothing.
so hard.
Dude, O'Malley took the batteries out and shit, dude. Or he
Oh,
just has the box turned off.
You son of a
O'Malley.
bitch! You're a monster, O'Malley.
He's over there. He's just counting like the $15 they sent him to
Yeah,
sell
dude.
out his buddy. It's not even like a book of money or nothing.
This'll
He's
get
just
me
like,
some haggis.
get me some haggis and a couple scratchers with this on the way home. I turned the small black box over in my hands, and I saw it. At the base of the antenna, the wire was severed. A clean and precise cut. Ah, some careful artisan of my doom had been in my room. While Oren filled my ears with his parables of the sea, while Martha set out her stews... Good line. While I had walked in my ignorance among the tombs of their making, I walked to the window, and through a crack in the lace, I looked down upon the square. The spectacle of the festival was nearly prepared. The pyres stood mountainous in the dusk. The islanders moved about their work with the grim and purposeful industry of acolytes at their devotions. The smiles I had taken for welcome, I now saw as the ravenous and serene masks of predators. I saw Malachi directing the final preparations, a high priest in his element. As if he felt the weight of my gaze that looked up from his duties. He looked up from his duties, and his eyes scanned the windows of the guest house. Our gazes met, and held for a long second across that ordained space. He gave me a slow and placid nod. It was a benediction. It was a final and awful amen. For I was not the guest. I was the honored guest. I was the harvest. I remained in that room while the last light of the bled out of the sky. My mind scrabbled at ways to escape. Swim to the mainland? I'd freeze to death. Steal one of their boats? The islanders' boats would be guarded as such upon this holy night. There was nothing but the clothing on my back. My only path forward was to play along. Just get in the bucket.
Yeah.
I poured cold and dead water from a pitcher into the basin, and put my face in it. In the clouded and sweeping glass of the mirror, I saw a ghost looking back. A pale face whose eyes held a terror I knew I must conceal behind some semblance of civility. I coached the pale man in the glass.
You're just a visitor. You are eager for the festival.
I descended the stair. Old Martha stood in the gloom of the lobby, polishing glasses. When she saw me, she offered up a smile of such grotesque welcome that it was a thing of surpassing horror.
Detective Hopper, there you are!
She said,
I was beginning to worry you would sleep through the commencement feast. You must be hungry. Go on and join the others in the square. Well, the fire will be lit soon. Find Malachi. He'll set you from a seat of honor.
I contrived a smile.
Wouldn't miss it for the world, Martha.
Outside, the world had been remade by fire. Torches on high staves bled a guttering light into the scene. The air was heavy with the sacramental odor of pine smoke and the rendering of fat from a massive pit near the fire. The islanders were gathering at long tables of rough-hewn timber, drinking from wooden cups and laughing a laugh that was not a sound of mirth, but a sound of ravenous and primal joy. A knot of men made music on fiddles and drums. I moved through them. Oren clapped a hand on my shoulder.
Almost time, detective. You'll never see another night like this one. What a
Brenna the
dick.
Weaver.
What a
Yeah, he
dick.
is a dick. He's doing
What
double
a
speak the whole time.
dick.
Yeah,
Screw
that-
this guy.
Brenna the Weaver smiled at me from the depths of some beatific trance. All right, they've all been beatific at this point. This is the veins. All of it was an act, and I, the guest, for whom this final act was prepared for. I saw Malachi then. He stood like some ghastly pontiff at the head of the main table, a crown of dark ivy on his white hair. He motioned me toward him, and I made my legs obey.
Alexander, my boy!
He boomed, gesturing to the seat beside him.
I'm so delighted you have joined us. I trust your day was illuminating?
Yeah, very scenic, I guess.
Excellent!
He said. He turned and raised his cup, and a sudden and profound silence fell upon that place.
People of Patch, we gather here tonight for the sacred harvest. As our forebears did, and our forebears before them. We thank the unending sea for the bounty it brings our shores.
A great and terrible baying rose from the assembly.
And we thank the drifting souls who find a way here.
He continued, and his cold eyes found mine and held them.
Who nourish our traditions and give us themselves that our community may survive another year.
The crowd roared, and their faces a gallery of feverish and contorted masks in the firelight. They raised their cups to me, all of them, and Malachi turned to me, and in the din his voice was a whisper of venom and benediction for me alone.
It is a great honor you provide us, Detective Harper. The great honor we can bestow. You are now truly part of our island story forever.
Platters of rendered meat and steaming roots were passed down the long boards of the tables. One was set before me, a charnel bounty piled high on the plate, and I could not look at it.
First you will eat with us,
Malachi said, and his voice was of a silken and dreadful honey, but with a subtext of iron.
It is a tradition that the guest partakes.
They were going to wait until I was full and slow. I picked at the flesh with my fork, and the ghastly ruse was the only thing between my life and the pyre that awaited it.
Tell me, Malachi.
I said, and marveled at the steadiness of my own voice as it came forth from my throat.
The ceremony itself, when does this happen? What am I to expect?
His smile widened.
Patience, my boy. After the feast comes the music, then the dance. Spiritual dance winding to the very center of the square. That is where our show ultimately gratitude. We show our ultimate gratitude at the foot of the fire under the moon.
My eyes quartered the square. The fire and the torches were the world's only light, and beyond their bleeding circles lay the utter blackness of the cliffs and the docks. It was the only way out of that lit and holy hell. Then came the dispensation for what I had not dared to pray. A man burdened with a roasted leg stumbled, and his platter crashed upon the earth with a wet and greasy clap. Ooh, that good pussy sounds like.
Yummy, yummy.
Momentary confusion took hold as men rushed into the small ruin, and their bodies formed a brief and chaotic screen between Malachi and myself. My mind surrenders its claim, and my body acted upon its own terrible ordinance. I shoved the great weight of the table and sent Malachi's cup spilling its dark wine across his lap. Rude. He sputtered a curse. I was over the bench and into the shadows before the first cry went up.
August is leaving!
A woman shrieked.
Don't let him reach the docks!
The frantic music of the feast was strangled in an instant, and in its place there rose a bestial clamor and the percussion of heavy boots upon the hard pan. I ran as I had not run since I was a boy who feared ghosts in the dark, and now the ghosts were real and at my back. I ran through the warren of lanes and between the salt-eaten cottages, and their knowledge of the place was offset by the pure and animal fury of my flight. I hid myself behind a stack of cordwood and held my breath as two fishermen passed, their faces limned with a righteous anger, and then I ran toward the sound and the smell of the sea. The docks. I broke from the last line of the houses, and I saw the harbor. A few boats sat tied fast in the black water, their familiar forms of no use to me. And then I saw it. Churning slow from the far pier was a light, and I heard the slow and steady systole and diastole of a diesel engine. Fuck this guy. It was a mainlander's boat, a trawler hugging the dark shore. It was my only hope. A roar from the blackness behind me. A clot of men bearing torches broke from the village, and at their head was Orin, his face raw, filled with the intent of murderous sacrament. They would be on me before I could reach the pier. I did the only thing that was left to a man in my extremity. I scrambled down the rock face at the harbor's edge, my hands shredded on the shells and the stone. I fell into the water, and the shock of such lethal cold seized the very heart in my chest. And I swam. I put my head down and crawled through the black and frigid water, my strength a coin I had spent with every stroke, my arms reaching for that single receding light. The shouts at my back turned to curses, and then to silence. They did not follow. They were content to commend my soul to the sea's cold ministry. The sea did its work. My limbs were things of lead, and my lungs were filled with fire. And as the last of my strength left me. Oh, yeah.
Dude, I know you're reading the tough parts because, like, the way my dyslexic cast would be all over the place and ruining it. I heard, like, when you said, the fuck this guy, there's a part of me that feels your pain, but there's also a part of me that's like, this is so brilliantly written. It
is brilliantly written.
You would taste like everything going on. It's just like little bits of human
every
flesh.
bit of this description is so good. This is a really good chase scene too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is just like that he is pretty much already at the edge of the water. The chase scene was really just like flash forwarding him through the dark of the forest to where he sees like the next relevant thing. There are men still pursuing him, so he has to make his jump right then and there. It wasn't like I dodged behind 2 oak trees and then they saw me, so I jumped under a pile of leaves and then they saw it doesn't ramble too much.
It doesn't and then write it.
Details that you need.
Yeah, it's a lot of problems with a lot of stories that you read online and even in media in general. You'll see a lot of and then writing, like, oh, and then he did this, and then he did that. This, he's doing it. You're just seeing the things that are going along around the world, which is just a part of it. This is how it is. This is how it is writing, which is brilliant. It truly is well written. I gotta commend our writer here for just doing such a remarkable job of just leading me down. I mean, I'm like picturing like the sinking city, that Lovecraftian city a lot better.
Yeah, it's got kind of like a Dagon feel almost to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And Innsmouth.
Innsmouth. It's got a big Innsmouth feel. And what's brilliant about this compared to what I've heard, I think we've all heard 1.5 million of those stories that have to do with something like the Harvest Festival or the folk horror or whatever. And I think what this does better than a lot is removes the shiny aesthetic. A lot of times they go with the more cult-like shiny aesthetic because it's so off-putting. But at the point now, we've seen it so many times with Midsummer, and everything seems to do the happy cult religion thing. It's the 60s vibe. This goes away with that and says this is Lovecraftian folk horror.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I really do. I definitely picture that this thing is not exactly current modern day. It's probably maybe like the 70s, 80s, something like that off the coast of God knows where, America. But like you said, I picture Maine or like somewhere in New England, which of course takes us back to the Lovecraftian.
And
it's the cold gray ocean.
The cold gray ocean. This is written more like it's more of a like this story in and of itself isn't really Lovecraftian, other than seeing his own reflection as like a gray. Well, that's not even Lovecraftian. I wouldn't say that, like the gray reflection of himself. That's like the horrific version of what's going to happen. Like himself seeing his own future of. That's more different. I know that's not exactly what he was relaying with seeing his own reflection.
I keep going back to it, but it reminds me more of Disco Elysium over and over again. Like he is not an overly capable detective or anything like that. And like the flip the table and run that he like sat and planned and like played along with and had to time perfectly and stuff like that. Like that was still not that gracious or smart of a plan. What if the table was bolted down? And he didn't know that, and just went to flip it or something like that, and just rolled a nat 1 basically, and just broke his arm.
Cooked himself.
And just
But I like
that's
his
what it just
ham-fisted
reminds me
way
so
of
much
doing it. It's just so it works so well to put what was his Michael Douglas. It's like Michael Douglas Black Rain, where he's stumbling through the story. He's stumbling through the story, just kind of happenstancing through it and doing the best he possibly can with the minimal training he's been allotted. And he's not the smartest guy. He's not the best detective, but he's been doing this shit for a long time.
He knows how to flip a table and run.
Exactly.
Like, he knows enough. All right, so the sea, which has bore our narrator to his almost certain demise, is now providing shelter and safety, and maybe a way out. And as the last of my strength left me, as I prepared to give myself to the deep, my flailing hand struck something hard and unyielding. The hull. A rope ladder hung down its side. With my fingers, I hooked them through the rungs, and I pulled myself from the water and came to be on the scaly and reeking deck of the boat. I collapsed and drew air into my lungs, in a great ragged gasps, as the lights of the cormorant's perch, the lights of that ordained and hellish feast, dwindled to a fading constellation of malevolent light upon the black and endless waters. And I was alive. The fisherman who pulled me from the black water looked upon me as if I were a shade dredged up from the seafloor, a thing not meant to return to the world of men. He gave me a blanket that reeked of fish and salt and the great and abiding rod of the ocean, and pointed to the nose of his trawler towards the mainland's distant lights. I offered a broken telling of a boating accident, and he did not question it, for the animal terror in my eyes was a testament older than any words. In the clean and well-lit rooms of the station house, my story sounded like madness. They listened with the concern of men who hear a confession for a sin they cannot comprehend. I gave them my testimony: Finn's whisper, the charnel ground of the cove, the sabotage radio, my flight from that ordained feast. They sent a Coast Guard chopper to circle that rock. The report came back and said everything was normal. A fishing village, quiet people. There was no proof, for this evil was a thing that left no proof, only a profound and terrible absence. Sergeant O'Malley was a bull of a man, whose faith was in the solidarity of the world, and my story was a heresy against his church.
Hypothermia, execute or exhaustion.
He declared, his voice a sermon for the bullpen.
Couple that with some of their homebrewed poison and you hallucinated the whole damn thing. Harper, get a grip.
For a week, I sat in that purgatory of paperwork, and every time I closed my eyes, the world dissolved into the gray shingle of the cove, and the pale and horrid glimmer of bone in the sand. Every shadow wore the face of Malachi, his smile a placid benediction upon my damnation. I was a man who had seen God's monstrous other half, and they called me mad for it. Then, on a morning like any other, the telephone on my main desk rang. I saw O'Malley emerge from the office, reading a slip of paper, and his face was a study in irritation.
Unbelievable,
He said, and stopped at my desk.
Get this, another domestic complaint from your precious island getaway.
Sir?
I asked, and I rose from my chair, though my legs were made of straw.
Noise complaint. Boyfriend and girlfriend this time. Apparently, some young couple named Thorne just moved over from the mainland 6 months ago. Looks like neighbor is reporting yelling, screaming, the whole 9 yards. Standard procedure,
He said, turning toward a rookie named Peterson, a boy so young his piety for the badge was still upon him.
Peterson, you're up.
The air went out of me.
Sergeant, no.
I said.
No, sir, you can't.
He turned back, and his brows were furrowed in an angry line.
Can't what, Harper? Can't do my job? Can't send an officer to a simple public disturbance call?
You don't understand, sir. It's a lure. It's not a real dispute.
I said, stepping toward him.
It's how they do it. It's how they get someone out there. First my call, now this one. Don't you see a pattern? You can't send him.
Detective, that's enough.
He said.
You have your own conspiracy theories, that's fine. Deal with them in your own time. But you will not interfere with police business based on some fever dream you had. Peterson is a capable officer. He doesn't carry your baggage.
He gave me a look of dismissal.
Now get back to your desk.
He turned his back on me. The sentence was passed. I returned to my place, and I watched as Peterson, young and doomed, and eager to prove his worth, grabbed the keys to his patrol car.
And Peterson!
O'Malley called out after him.
It's the perch, no sidearm, just keep the pace.
The boy gave a nod full of terrible and unknowing confidence. He cast a look of pity upon me as he passed, the sane man pitying the seer, and then he walked out into the light of the day. That was 3 days ago. Peterson never activated his radio. The rock has gone mute out there in the gray expanse of the water. He has not come back. And I know, with a dreadful and certain gnosis, that he never will. The great and terrible wheel has turned. The old blood sacrifice is paid, and the harvest is come again. And I, who had seen the awful workings of the oracle, was now just another soul, damned to watch it happen.
Alright, you suck. Dude, he should have... Like, okay, it would have ruined the story. The way the story ended is good horror, right? That's good horror.
Yeah,
That's the horror. This is where I always was at odds growing up with, like, horror fans. And this is also, like, my friends hate me when I play horror games. Because I play through them like I'm a goddamn action star. I'll put a game on the lowest difficulty just so I can run through and just like shoot everyone in the face. That's how I want to picture it, because I like the horror aesthetic, but I like when they take things into their own hands and get things done. And so this ending with the perfect horror ending of he survived, but at what costs? To me, it's like, dude, saddle up, boys. We gotta go. He's got to go in and just start killing. If he ends up in an insane asylum in prison for a genocide on a rock, he would be my boy. But
I think that it had a really neat ending, that he went from being so confident at the beginning. Like, he was that rookie, of course, like right before that happened. And in like a few days, he must have come back looking like 10 years older. 10 more years of experience and stuff like that, you know, like that he survived this 2 days on this island and got off. Maybe that's what O'Malley's looking for.
Dude, O'Malley wants... He's
like, if you can't escape a pack of simple cannibals that don't even chase you into the water... Like, he's like, you're not...
You can't handle the city. You think you're gonna handle the city with crackheads? There's crackheads out there, me boy. There's crackheads, me boy. There's people with guns, and have you seen this thing they call the Uzi? Like, but so he's putting him through the trials of can you crawl your way out of cannibalism? And then gaslights them on a daily basis. This dude,
O'Malley is peak gaslighter.
Dude would be incredible at doing politics on the internet. He just the other side's the bad guys. It's so bad, bro. He's such an awful human.
I loved this story though.
Oh, it's great. Awesome. This is a really good story.
Horror. It's so good. And it had a unique enough twist on it. I mean, it was so familiar of a story that had really well written. Like, we've all seen this, like, the overconfident detective walks into a trap, barely escapes with his life and all that type of stuff. Yeah, sure. But just those beautiful descriptions of the island, of the town and the people and stuff like that, with so much, like, really obvious foreshadowing.
Oh, 100%.
They're like, drink up, detective, it might be your last hurrah, and stuff like that. It was so on the nose.
Yeah, it's written, because like you were saying, it's written well enough that the on-the-nose stuff feels perfect. It feels perfect foreshadowing for what it's going to be. It's nothing we haven't seen before. It's not breaking the mold, but you think about folk horror, and it always kind of plays the same way out. I mean, you have one of three endings you can do. You kill the main protagonist, the main protagonist lives, and someone else dies because of it, or you send in the Gestapo squad, and they kill everything, right? Those are your three endings. It's hard to do it any different, and I think if you're gonna pick, I'm gonna do a horror in this genre, the best you can do is just try to build the aesthetic to be as interesting as possible. And I think the fact that he went with like the waters of Innsmouth or whatever for the aesthetic was just so perfect as a backdrop.
Yeah, mixing like police procedural with Lovecraftian horror and like really poetic descriptions are what made this all like, it just, I mean, this is the better of the two stories that we've read so far.
Oh,
not nearly
100%.
enough time went into it and stuff like that, but just from a literary perspective and stuff.
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even close to. It's fucking bonkers.
From anime to like HBO or something.
Yeah, I know.
Crunchyroll over to HBO.
This is we went from Crunchyroll to what's that one? It's like ADL.
A4.
Yeah, A4.
Like, oh,
A24, A24, whatever it's called. We went to that like an A24 like indie Sundance flick is what this is. This is so Sundance Film Festival.
Max Payne meets Midsummer.
Yeah,
in Maine.
Yeah, it's
all of the M's.
A lot of long shots. The cinematography is what would get you here. The big moment isn't as big moment as you would expect in a horror film, but it's just enough with the long and the fear and the sitting on the boat back. It harkens back to like a more of an indie like darling film than it does anything along the lines of I'm gonna punch you in the smackaroo like the other story did.
I would absolutely watch this adaptation. If some
100%.
indie filmmakers pick this up, I would watch that. I would act in it too. I'd be the detective.
Dude,
all right, man.
Just drunk detective. But yeah, that was a good one. Make sure to follow us on all the things. We got Twitter. We got make sure to give us a rating on Spotify. We want to be up there in the big numbers. We want to be like smacking down some of those brain rot political podcasts. I want to see Ben Shapiro go down. I don't know who some of the left wing ones are, but they're going down to Sam Cedar. I want to take down Sam Cedar and all these other goonbads. I need to be up there. Like, we need to be making out with Joe Rogan. That's what needs to happen. We need to be on that.
No, we're going to kick him down, too.
You think we're going to knock down Joe Rogan?
Yeah, he's already getting knocked down.
I think Wish Creepcast, the haunted router, has like some work to do before we hit like Joe Rogan levels. But maybe one day. I think that we have the possibility to one day goon it out when my camera quality isn't the tapes that we're watching the Calamity in the last story. So
oh yeah, we got sets and extras and scenes and all types of crazy shit coming up, man. But
now, and I don't know where this will sit, where Nat's channel will be at, or my channel will be at. Go make sure. Don't worry about my channel. It's sloppy.
No,
with
do
craziness.
worry about his channel.
Yeah, I will say something on that channel. It'll eventually get me in hot water. But definitely go follow Nat1 Games. His if you like his narrating here, he does that for video games and stuff, and he's incredible. Way better content than my poop and penis joke and clit slapping stuff that I do over on my end. But make sure to go sub to his channel.
Skill has been reading things off.
Dude, he's incredible at it. There's a reason why my goonbag ass had to go find somebody that had a buttery silk smooth voice to read, because I can't read. Fun fact, I actually have text-to-speech going in one ear so that I can do these voices the entire time. I look at words and I'm like, who put this alien squiggle wiggles in front of me?
It's easier for him to time my narration and remember the lines than to follow along. It's wild, dude. It was in Russian when he fucking screen shared with me. We can't even get it translated.
The sad thing is, there was a solid, when you were going through a lot of the descriptions toward the end there during the chase, I spent half the time trying to figure out where we were.
Yeah,
dude,
I was doing that earlier on the last part of the prison guard one. That's where you kept like reading and being like, he said, and then going, and I'm like, fuck are we? I'm like, oh my god, dude, there are my words in the middle of
I just started blowing past those because he did that he said thing so much.
He did, and you got it timed pretty right.
It was it was like, and like, don't get me wrong, I think Mr. Outlaw does smut better, or like horror smut better than anybody else on the internet. I want people to know, they might hate that story, but it holds a dear place in my heart as being the most cringy, amazing story ever written on the internet. And like, obviously compared to something like this is going to be much better, more production value. The guy probably doesn't respond to only exclusively UFC forums, but we gotta have that UFC cringe every once in a while. We gotta have it.
We will be returning to lots of wackadoo stories. Like we're gonna get bonkers.
We're gonna get bonkers.
We're beyond criminally insane. That's the real marketing thing that I want to actually impress on everybody else. Everybody else might be criminally insane.
We're bonkers right? Insane, guys.
Yeah.
We're bonkers. But all right, guys, catch you on the next one.